Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Story Time with Dezy. It is so great to be back, and with great news too, along with another um, co-writer to help us out develop the story even more. We also got a new voice actor that has so much talent and so much potential that I am really excited to give them a trial run today to kind of get them into the feel of podcasting and introduce them to our story that we've created so far. And I am so excited to just hear what they come up with and how much effort and potential and joy that they could bring to this podcast and just the talent that they bring along with it too, since I have seen their personal work and how they act, and it is absolutely phenomenal, and I absolutely love it, and I just want to say thank you to them for even accepting to join us. This is honestly a dream come true that we met you. It is fantastic, and I am so glad that you decided to join. And of course, I'ma also give credit and a huge shout out and thank you to our new uh to our new co-writer, as they have helped me out a bit with progressing the story even further and coming up with new stories, and it's just amazing. So thank you to Gabriel and Marvel, our two newest members of the crew, and I hope you guys decide to stay with us for a little while longer, so that way maybe we can create a special bond between all of us, as all me and my other workers have, as we created a bond almost like family. And it is so great to have you guys join our family as we continue to grow slowly but surely into something far bigger and greater than any of us would have imagined. Alright, so out of the sappy stuff, let's get on to it with chapter 9 of Metal Plague. Chapter 9: Escaping the Hellscape. After leaving Percival's office, I was escorted to the clinic tent that sat just outside the massive factory. The medics at the tent were quiet and didn't say anything when they were stitching up my wounds, but as I was looking around the tent, I could see several other men as they lay on beds with much worse and deeper cuts on their arms than me. But what caught my interest was that some had bandages on their hands with an aroma of burnt meat that would fill the tent every so often. Hadn't the medics kept the front of the tent open, the burnt meat scent surely would have taken over the entire tent. When the medics finished, it was already evening as the sun was making its way west into the twilight sky. As we rode back to the Fosse in the old, worn-out cart, I took my last few moments staring at the horizon where the forest of trees sat, just out of reach. We'll make it, I think to myself as I tried to plan an escape plan to leave the Fosse and live the lives that we all want, with real homes, real families, real lives. So as my thoughts raced at what life can be once I escape, I can't help but stare at the forest as it disappears when we slowly descend into the looming spiral. I keep my focus on that one sense of freedom as it slowly disappears from me as we descend back down to my prison. The walls now feel suffocating as we descend further down into the taunting spiral and towards an entryway to a small way to a cavern in the middle section of the fosse. Standing outside of the cavern were Nova and Gilbert, as Nova had her hand close to her mouth, nearly biting off her nails, and Gilbert was rashly pacing back and forth with his hands behind his back. But the sound of horses' hoofs nearing towards them, their heads immediately turned towards me as they both shouted my name.
Hugo!
They both shout as they rush over to the cart and I hop off the back. Walt's almost knocking me over as Gilbert captures me in a tight embrace. I return the gesture as I blush a bit as Nova chuckles at the sight.
You're okay. What happened up there? Did they do anything to you?
Gilbert questions as he releases me from his embrace and proceeds to examine me for any other injuries. No, I'm fine, Gil. I just had a very interesting conversation, I answer, seemingly to calm Gilbert down a bit. Ultimately, it doesn't completely wipe the fear and worry from Gil's eyes. Then I turn my focus up to Nova, who had a single tear run down her tan cheek. She then wipes it away when she notices me staring at her. Was that a tear I saw? I guess that made you really worry, huh? I probe as I can't help but place a smug look on my face. Nova then scoffs and crosses her arms across her chest while walking towards me.
Hardly. I just happened to have a piece of dirt in my eyes from day's work, unlike someone. And besides, I was only worried since you got taken away by those thugs. Who knows? Anything could have happened.
She replied, obviously a bit flustered by my comment. So you were worried about me, I remark, causing Nova to blush slightly as a hint of moonlight began to shine down on us.
Ugh, forget it. Let's just get inside and rest. Besides, you have an audience waiting for you.
Nova says as she walks away with a bit of frustration in her voice. Heading into the cavern, I merely chuckle at the sight and follow her with Gilbert close behind. It's already been weeks since Gilbert and I arrived at the Fosse, but we've never truly explored the cavern system of the Fosse since we work mostly on the exterior that engulfs us. Although navigating wasn't necessarily difficult with the help of several torches and lamps that are used to light the cavern, I may or not have bumped into a few cavern walls. While not causing any severe injuries, I did feel a few bruises on my arms and legs begin to form. But after walking a few feet into the cavern, we had entered a large corridor that could fit almost all of the children that inhabit the fosse, as it also spirals into many sections that connect throughout the fosse, with dozens and dozens of entry points that all connect like an ever-growing ant nest. At the bottom of the corridor were Lewis's lackeys, whom of which were gossiping and spreading murmurs among themselves. As we approached them, the echoes of banter died down as their attention turns to us. The boys break from their huddle and expand to show their numbers. While some look a bit distrustful, none appear to be very angered at me from defeating their previous leader. But while looking closely at the faces of the boys, I don't recognize any of them to be Lewis. Where's Lewis? I asked the group, but none respond right away. They merely throw glances at each other, trying to decide which of them should respond until the one that appears to be closest to Lewis in stature, but with a smaller body build, sighs and speaks for the group.
He's over there, hasn't spoken much since he came back, however.
He replies, as he gestures with his head towards an entry port to the corridor where Lewis stood, leaning against the stone wall with his back facing the group. But with further examination, wet spots can be seen throughout his white shirt, with small hints of red in the middle of the spots that colored his back.
So what's your first order of business, boss?
The one from before asked. Excuse me? I reply, thrown off by the question.
You made a deal with Lewis that if you won, then you'd be our leader. Since you won by some miracle, we're willing to oblige to those terms.
He answered, looking a bit disappointed from admitting that I was able to defeat Lewis. Wait, so you're going to blindly follow me? Just like that? I questioned. Even though this does benefit me greatly as it can prove easier to get them to help us escape, it was still a bit shocking to hear that they would do so blindly.
Hey, listen, we may be brutes and all, but we know when the fight is won fair and square. You won with your strengths. But the deal that you made, there's nothing we can really say against it, since we trust Lewis and his decisions, even if they don't fully work for him.
he responds as the others nod in agreement.
Well, that was easier than expected.
Nova commented as she glared at the group.
So, what do we do now, Hugo?
Gilbert asks as he fidgets with his fingers, possibly due to the anxiety that surfaced from being around the group that had beaten me just a few nights ago. While plotting in thought, we just stood in silence until my gaze fell upon Lewis again. Seeing the red color on Lewis's back that was once almost unnoticeable, now appearing to spread along his shoulder blades. Escape, I say, not faltering my gaze nor facial expressions. The group of boys seemed a bit stunned at first, but Gilbert and Nova didn't seem to be at all that fazed by the notion.
And how do you reckon we do that? If you haven't noticed, the Fosse isn't some place you can walk on out of.
The boy from before remarked, looking a bit bewildered at the notion as if true escape was near to impossible, especially with whatever weapons Percival would be hiding in that factory. Well, I was hoping maybe Nova and Lewis can help us figure that out. I respond as I gesture my hand towards Nova.
Me? How would I help you escape?
Well, you and Lewis have been around the longest out of all of us, right?
Yes.
Then you must know the schedules of the guards that come in and out of the Fosse other than Lewis and his group. Surely they must have a routine on when to come down here, right?
Well, yeah. They come down once a week to provide rations, and on the first of every month to collect the collected Neiman pieces that were dug up in the mines. But how exactly is this going to help you?
Nova adds as the visible confusion is present on her face. I then walk to the side of the group and use my finger to draw a spiral in the sand. So each week we know that they come in with the cart full of rations, and they only try to stay for 30 minutes at best to not draw too much attention away from mining hours. So that would give us limited time to try and escape if we use those methods. Besides, they'll catch us in daylight once we get out to the surface. So, what else can we do?
Well, what about the winter solstice?
Gilbert blurted out, causing a decent amount of surprise to flow through all of us.
Well, the winter solstice is the longest night of the year, so we'll get a couple extra hours of darkness to get everyone out.
He explained. Gil, you're a genius! I shout, grabbing Gilbert by the shoulders and sharing a smile of enthusiasm. Then I crouched back to the drawing I made in the dirt and drew figures entering the spiral. If we can stall the guards that come down with the wagons to carry the Nemean and somehow incapacitate them, then we can use the wagons to carry weapons and the younger orphans up to the surface. The weapons can act as a last resort if we are to be spotted, I explained. When I turned to face the others, they just nodded in agreement. But then Nova gives a face of worry.
But if we do manage to get out, where do we go? Wouldn't they be able to follow us? It would be pointless if we can't outrun them.
Nova exclaims, lowering her head, and as her smile melts away and she narrows her eyes that had disappointment embedded into them, she faced the ground. I pondered on what we would do if we managed to get to the surface, as the mission would be pointless if we couldn't find shelter. But then it came to me. Well, when I went up to the surface today, I saw a forest on the horizon. I don't think it would be entirely impossible to be able to reach it and take refuge in the trees until we could get to a nearby town, I explained, as I draw several trees in the dirt with my finger.
Okay, so once we get to the forest and the surface, that's great, but how do we draw the guards' attention away long enough to sneak weapons into the wagons?
Pondered one of the boys. Though it was a good question, it was one that I didn't quite have the answer to. Neither did the others as we sat in silence and circled the plans drawn on the soil beneath us. Then a scoff could be heard from where Louis stood.
If you want to get everybody out, then you need to spread the word that we need distraction for these plans of yours to work. What's a good way to make use of a bunch of noisy kids? You need a riot.
Alright, and that was the end of chapter 9 of Metal Plague. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I do still want to give out a huge thank you and shout out to Gabriel and Marvel for helping us and for even deciding to join us in this giant operation that we have for podcasting and this ever growing family of podcasters, actors, and writers, and whatever else that we have here as a family or podcasting family, as I like to refer to it, and just for even joining us on this long journey, which I know is probably be at least a year by the time we finish this first story of ours. But it does mean a lot to me, and I do really enjoy doing this. And it's so great to know that I have an amazing support system from you guys, that you just help me out so much. And this podcast honestly wouldn't be able to run properly or even be functional at all without your guys' help. So I really do owe a lot of my success to you guys. And yeah, thank you for not just YouTube, but every single person that works with me on the podcast. I am so grateful for every single one of your guys' helps and just your support as well. It really does mean the world to me. And I am so glad that you guys have decided to be part of my family in a weird type of way. But we don't talk about that. Alright, before I close off this episode, I do want to say that if you like what we do and want to find a way to help support us, then go ahead and look for us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/storytimewithdesi. Again, that's patreon.com/storytimewithdesi. And you can find the 3 tiers that we have set up on there, ranging from $3 to $9. And from those 3 ranges, you could get shoutouts, bloopers, early access, and even digital copies of the stories. So that way you could do a little read along with us on the podcast, or even just read it on your own time if you like to read and still listen. Yeah, I want to say that's about it. I think that's it. Yeah, that should be it. Alright, so thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to either subscribe or follow the podcast, and so that way you can get alerted when we put up new episodes. And also, now we have a Instagram, and if you like to follow us on there, go look for us at Storytime with Dezy, and you should find our page. We don't have anything set up right now, but we will start posting soon. But if you want to be alerted or even get little comics or concept art for the podcast, go ahead and look for us on Instagram at Storytime with Dezy, and you'll be able to find us there. Alright, I am your host, Desire Gomez, and this is Storytime with Dezy. Bye!